record on this computer. Okay, so you're good to go.
Okay, I'm going to share the screen. Hello everybody, I'm Lesley-Ann Hayden and I'm the Programme Manager for the Museum Standards Programme. And thank you, Valerie, for inviting me to speak. And I'm speaking today on collections. Valerie has given the title of this particular part of the afternoon as Care of Collections, but I think you'll find when I've gone through my presentation that for the grant scheme, it covers a lot of other aspects of collections and how things are related to your collections, their exhibition, etc., or accessibilities to cover. My 30 minutes is covering things from that perspective. So I'm going to just start by setting up the slideshow here properly for you to have a look at, and from the beginning. And I've put up this slide first just to reinforce my point that collections are at the centre of what museums, the grant scheme covers both the Museum Standards Programme as well as grants related to collections for those submitting applications on behalf of community and heritage organisations. And I would reiterate again, Colm and Lawcorn's points that this is a community and heritage grant scheme. It's not a scheme for private collections, but also under collections are covered by the Heritage Council, its Museum Standards Programme. So this is a slide that I actually show at orientations for new museums coming into the programme. And it shows that for the programme itself, MSPI collections are at its heart, but I think also for the grant scheme as well, collections are at its heart, but they could be related both to care of collections, collections management, or public services, or aspects of the management of the museum as well, or policy with regard to care of collections and so on. So I'm going to start off by talking about what resources are available to you, whether in or out of the programme. The Museum Standards Programme Guide is available on the Heritage Council's web pages. If you look under programmes and scroll down to the Museum Standards Programme, there are a number of pages and you will find that you can click the PDF of the guide to get it from there. And it will cover, the Museum Standards Programme, for those of you who don't know it, is an accreditation scheme which sets 34 standards. There are minimum standards with regard to best practice. As you'll have seen from the previous screen, they relate to management and policies and governance, care of collections, that is documentation, and care of collections in environmental monitoring, etc. And also visitor services, that is exhibition, education, and accessibility to your museums. So the guide is there to look at, just to see, say, for instance, what minimum standards there might be with regard to environmental monitoring, what might be required. It won't give you any guidance on any of the equipment that you might purchase, but it'll give you an idea of what that might do or what that should do. I'd also like to ask you to have a look on the Heritage Council website at previous projects. As part of this presentation, I am going to reference some previous projects just to show the types of projects that were supported last year. But there are many more projects that I could have used related to collections, and also for those of you coming more generally this afternoon, the different types of areas such as wildlife or built heritage, etc. So if you go to the Heritage Council website and look under the funding, Amanda has put up tables under Tranche 1 and Tranche 2 for the Community Heritage Scheme last year, which lists all of the projects that were supported. I've just taken a few for our purposes this afternoon. And then finally, I would also like to suggest that you look, and it has been mentioned before, the Heritage Council resource page. I have even put the address in here, though I think it's going to be put up in the chat. And this across the many disciplines, including collections or digitization of collections, has many, many links to resources that are going to help you perhaps this year, but also looking ahead to future projects. And I have just taken two out for this presentation that, if you haven't already thought of these or been aware of them, are relevant to assist you. For those of you who are looking and for various projects related to either the conservation of an object or looking to have conservation appraisals done of your collections or an item in your collection, the Institute of Conservator Restorers in Ireland is the accrediting body of Irish conservators, and on their website page you'll find them under icri.ie. There is a Find a Conservator page which lists the accredited conservators, and it lists them by their discipline. So if you've got archives, say, and are looking for a paper conservator, or if there's a painting and you're looking for a painting conservator or a watercolor conservator, or if the object is made from metals or woods or just generally, you will find the people in Ireland who may be able to assist you. Now, many of them may already be lined up to assist with this year's projects, but you will need for your applications a report done by them with regard to making a quote, say, for the conservation of an object, and they will need to have assessed it, to have a look and seen what's wrong with it, so the case can be made that this object needs conserving, and also how much the quote is for, as part of the information that you need to provide when you submit your grant application. I have also indicated that the Oral History Network Ireland might be an organisation that some of you may wish to look at their website or contact them. I noted from last year's applications, and I've noted some further into this presentation, that there were a number of projects related to collecting oral history, recording conversations with people about their experiences, saying or whatever that might be. And I think first and foremost in doing those recordings, it's important to realize that there are ethics related to the recording and collecting of histories, and it's as well to be aware of them and how you might go about negotiating and protecting the ethics of protecting the recordings that you've made, and also just in keeping these recordings and reassuring those that you are recording of that you are going about this with the greatest, with appropriate ethics in mind. I'm sure that that has all been taken into account for the applicants that are collecting oral histories already. But for those of you considering it, I think looking at the Oral History Network's website and contacting them if you're unsure. They also organise events and training. There is membership available through them, as well as having an annual conference. And I've just put as an illustration here, for instance, last November, they held an online workshop on archiving oral history. So how to keep it, how to future-proof it, how to do that. So now I've got 3 or 4 pages, and these are the projects that I've taken from the tables which I've mentioned are already listed in greater detail with more projects on the Heritage Council's website. But I'm using these just to highlight the type of projects that received a grant last year. to either confirm that your project may be eligible or to give you ideas looking ahead. It's a very short period if you're having the ideas now. It's always probably as well to have, as the CEO of the Heritage Council said to me quite recently, best to have some projects in your bottom drawer ready to go. But if you do, this will also help you to see if what you have in mind may be covered by this program, this grant scheme. So, for instance, one museum last year got a grant to for a consultant to conduct a feasibility study on improving physical entry access to the museum, and that would cover accessibility, looking at how accessible their museums and exhibitions were to their visitors, especially those with disabilities, and receiving a study upon which they may work in future years to look for future funding on how they might improve on access to their museum. And then there's another project from another museum to research, recover, preserve and promote the historical legacy of the amateur dramatic movement. This is from a museum, a writers' museum in the west of Ireland. And then this would be a paper conservator, but the conservation and digitisation of named persons commemoration society archive. And this, you can see phase 1. So this is the first part of a project. I imagine that this particular applicant may be coming back this year to see if they can get a grant to continue this project under phase 2. And then this particular, the last example on this slide, to digitize the paper archives of this museum. And I don't understand what OCR or III or 111F quality means myself. I'd have to investigate that, but make them accessible on worldwide platforms. I happen to know this museum is probably one of the expert museums with regard to digitizing and presenting and future-proofing collections. So they received the top grant of 15,000 last year. Of course, this year's grants may go up to 20,000. So the next slide. Now we go on to some of the nitty-gritty on this page. Nitty-gritty both to support those in the museum standards program, but also for those of you who are looking to improve the care of your collections if you're voluntary run museums or have collections and displays and exhibitions and you're not necessarily in the program. But the grant will support, for instance, this applicant wanted to increase the standard of environmental monitoring and control of their collection store and exhibition space. And this was with regard to receiving loans from national cultural institutions. And in this particular applicant's gallery, there is an exhibition going on and they have been lent pictures from the National Gallery. And to allow this exhibition to go ahead with these loans, it needed to raise the bar, which was already high, on its environment and how it recorded and met best practice on environmental monitoring. But now that this equipment is in place for all future exhibitions and caring for its collections in place already. And then maybe at a cheaper level, the second example is the installation of a Hanwell approved environmental system. And for those of you not sure what an environmental system may cover, it covers monitoring heat, light, relative humidity. It could be done with a hand monitor, and those can be a few hundred euro. And you're recording on paper and putting into Excel spreadsheets, or something more sophisticated where the reading's done and go directly to a software program in your computer. And then a very specific example, conservation of 1860s Wharfdale printing press. I think that does what it says on the tin with regard to an example. But for that, the applicant would have had to have received a full report from an appropriate conservator with a quote with regard to what was involved in conserving this printing press. And then the last example is digitizing, making accessible a keyword, and interpreting another keyword, a selection of its archival records with accompanying educational videos. And this applicant received about €4,000 towards that. So this is where the mining comes in, where I was thinking about miners, and this covers a number of ways. So that was virtual mine tour and producing digital content using their resources and objects, and new interviews with miners and miners women folk. So collecting oral history as well. So they would have had the appropriate equipment for collecting the oral history, and the ability and the equipment and the software for producing the digital content. And then another oral history project, preserve, safeguard oral histories, documents, photographs and artifacts relating to an island community. And this is the collection of the sort of oral histories, documents and photographs. It's not the digitization of. So this is a cheaper project. It was 1,500, and just to note, the grant scheme this year, minimum grant is considered is for 2,000 plus the contribution that the applicant would make, so that would be about €500 in the case of €2,000. So I imagine that there's a second part to this project in the digitization and display. And then this local authority museum, again, very much museum standards program related probably, but it was commissioning a condition assessment report, and it would have commissioned a conservator to do this on its collections or parts of its collections. And then again, maybe more museum standards program related, but this applicant at the bottom was looking to purchase Axial collection software for cataloguing the collection. Now, a lot of museums out there still inventory and management on paper or through Access or Excel or whatever, but there are collections management software programs out there, and this museum I think had AdLib before, which has been taken over by Axial, and hence they're looking to upgrade to Axial and looking probably with regard to a documentation backlog plan to assist them with the cataloguing of their collections. And then I'm going to stop going through all of these. You can read them, but for instance, the second one down here is the Conservation of 8 Ledgers and 1 Bible from the Methodist Church. This actually is a volunteer-run museum which got presented key paper documents, an archive from an old family in the area with very much relevance to the work of this museum. And it contacted a paper conservator that works in Muckross, out of Muckross House. And this, I think, is the second part of a program that they've been working on. And then more audio displays collecting of oral histories to present to the public the actual voices and stories of those who had a direct connection to some railway in Ireland before they are lost forever. And this again, there's an urgency to some projects which will be listened to with regard to key areas of the social history in Ireland, and collecting these voices because we can now, and digitize them and future-proof them so that we will be able to, historians or general public or whoever will be able to hear about the work of the railways in this particular part of the country in future years. Then quickly running through the final one, there's the restoration of an important film, the making of a permanent digital online exhibition of selected works from the treasury of this particular collection. And then I also want to to stress that the grants will also go to the purchase of archival boxes, archival materials, and so on to help preserve collections and storage. So for instance, the fourth one down here is to rehouse an index of archival quality, an index in archival quality folders to ensure its long-term preservation. And this contains, God help the person just putting them away, 10,000 files of biographical information on Irish doctors. But for a very small grant, about €3,000, a terrific amount of work will be done in preserving this particular archive for this particular applicant. And then the final one here is this museum is creating a digital exhibition gallery on the museum's website, and it's hoping to develop a suite of online exhibitions demonstrating the impact of the print industry. Again, part of the social fabric, social history of Ireland. So these are looking at some projects generically, and all of this information, including you'll find the names of the museums, etc., are available in a table that Amanda has put up under funding on the Heritage Council's website. So I just wanted to look more particularly at a couple of two or three examples specifically of what was achieved last year. And I put up some photographs from Galway City Museum with permission. And they received 2 years ago a wedding trousseau, which consisted, and you can see the bride in the photograph there, of 2 bodices, a skirt, silk stockings, kid gloves, and these wedding shoes. And a textile conservator was engaged to write a report on the what was required to conserve and exhibit and store this particular collection, and a report submitted as part of the application with a quote from the conservator. And part of what it involved was that there was some areas that required some mending, there was some cleaning to be done, and also everything was quite crushed, as you can see here from the first picture, the picture on the left of the shoes before they were beautifully conserved. Also an appropriate archival box, which was purchased to put all of these objects in store, which would have had acid-free tissue paper and so on, and probably, I can't remember specifically, but part of the work of the conservator was probably just packing them up carefully as an example of how they should be stored even within the box. And then the National Maritime Museum of Ireland, if I go ahead, I can show you a photograph of the before and after, but the National Maritime Museum of Ireland, their grant covered both this display cabinet and also the conservation of the ceremonial dress uniform of Captain Robert Halpin. And you can see how it was displayed before, and now you can see on the right how it is displayed now. The work of the conservator included mounting the dress uniform on a bespoke mannequin, as well as any work that was required on the refurbishment and conservation and preservation of the uniform and the accoutrements, the sword and scabbard, etc. The hat, you name it. So this applicant, the National Maritime Museum, received a grant both for the museum grade display cabinet, and for which they would have had to have had a quote, and also for the display and preservation of the uniform itself. Captain Robert Halpin, for those of you who don't know, was a Wicklow man born in the early part of the 19th century. Tinnikilly House, for those of you who know the restaurant and hotel there in Rathnew, was his home. And Captain Robert Halpin, in the biggest ship in the world, apparently, the SS Eastern, 4,000 miles of telegraphic cable between 4 continents, which obviously linked up the world from a communications perspective. So an important Irish figure in Irish maritime history. And then I've put up the example of Donaghmore Farm and Workhouse Museum because they, in 2020, received a smaller grant of less than €3,000 to commission a consultant to conduct an accessibility audit of their museum, and accessibility with regard to people with certain disabilities, whether sort of physical, visual, and so on. And then following on from that audit, they submitted another grant in 2021, and that covered a range of areas. Their 10,800 covered, for instance, the consultants giving training on accessibility for the museum staff, the development of a 3-year policy and implementation program for accessibility for their museum, and also it covered. The accessibility policy covered items that they might wish to implement over a period of years. So in 2021, they have gone to various suppliers and have installed internal and external room signs with Braille. Forgive the spelling mistake, there should be 2 L's in that. An external finger sign and also a hearing loop system, all to help people with visual disabilities negotiate the buildings of the workhouse as they go through the exhibitions. The girls' dormitory is the dormitory of the workhouse. As you probably know, workhouses divided people up when they arrived into men, women, girls, boys. So this is a sign with Braille that indicates it's the girls' dormitory. And finally, the Irish Workhouse Centre, another workhouse centre, and I must admit, what I've just talked about with regard to the dormitories, I learned from a video that they have on their website. But they have been working on the development of a museum at the Workhouse Centre for a number of years now. The project started a year or 2 earlier, and it's coming to fruition. It's their museum upgrade project. The work on the Workhouse Centre has actually been going on for many years. For instance, the Arts Council supported them with the development of a 15-minute video about what it's like to be in a workhouse, which is well worth looking at and is on their website. So they received funding for both some sort of for display cases last year, and also for some interpretive panels. And for the person who asked this morning if the program will support the work of artists, the interpretive panels, from my memory, they commissioned an artist to develop 12 illustrations for these panels. So what I would like to do now is actually to end up with a short film about 1 minute 30 seconds to inspire you on developing your own grant schemes. And I wish you every good luck. And of course, I'm available to answer any questions before the end of my session. So I'm going to stop share now. And if you'll bear with me, I am going to take this down. And also just set this up here. And I think I should be set now to share this with you. There we go. Oh, I'm going to stop that. Yeah, share sound. There we go. So hopefully this will work now. And you are seeing it. And importantly, you can see there that they have that they've also acknowledged the Heritage Council at the end of their videos. Thank you very much. And if anybody has any questions, Valerie, I'm happy to answer them.
Video as well. Because it'd be great to get it, because I see we do have one of the stars of the video in our attendees.
We have indeed.
I won't out you, but you know who you are.
Yeah.
So a question that we have here is, I have a collection of items relating to the famous O'Connell election in Clare in 1828. I would love to have this collection on display, but I would need financial help to upgrade security beforehand. Could this grant scheme be of help?
I think I would probably have to answer as Colm and Lorcan have done before. It depends on if this is a community grants program or if this is an individual, sort of on behalf of an individual as an applicant. So if it was part of a community project with regard to this, you talk, I think, in terms of sort of developing it for a museum. So I suppose where I would say the place to start if this is a community project is actually getting some advice on the actual development of a museum. I've actually asked for it to be put up, and I think it will be put among the resources, a report that was written by Gillian O'Brien, Dr. Gillian O'Brien, on the development of museums from the thought to actually making it happen. So as I say, it all depends on where the project is at, and for the Heritage Council's grants programme, whether it is a community-based project.
Thank you. And we have some people asking if they can have access to your slides. So will I just ask that people email you directly for them, or can I send them on to you, or how? Or yeah, they can.
Yeah,
just I won't know specifically.
You won't know for certain. Yes, if they would like my slides, it's lahayden@heritagecouncil.ie, and I'll wait till I have a few of you, and then I'll BCC and send them on. So I'll wait a day or two before sending them on, just in case it's not just one or two people. I imagine it's only one or two.
Don't sell yourself short, Leslie. I have that video geared up if you want me to share it.
Oh, if you could, thank you.
And perhaps after the video, could I just come in there as well, Valerie?
Mm-hmm.
We haven't got the sound, Valerie.
Have you not?
No. There's a little button when you share screen at the bottom that you have to click to share sound.
Well, it's just music anyways, so.
Oh, it's only music, it can be shown, yeah.
Anyone who's worked in County Galway will see some very familiar faces there.
So the storyboards, in fact, this project also, somebody asked this morning about commissioning an artist. The 12 illustrations were commissioned for the storyboards from an artist, as I understand it, as part of this project. And then the project also covered the cost of the purchase of museum-grade display cabinets.
Yeah, it's really fabulous.
Yeah, I can't wait to visit myself.
In a lovely part of the country as well. Oh, there we go. And as we mentioned earlier,
the Heritage Council as well.
Brilliant. Amanda, did you want to come in there?
Just on especially the whole area of collections. there is a tendency on applications coming in that the applicants assume that we know about their projects, particularly if they're part of the MSPI program. And this can actually be a downfall because we can only assess based on the information that's presented. So make sure to include photographs of your collection. Tell us why it's important, why you need this piece of specialised commitment or equipment, what it will do for the project. Again, please do not assume that people are familiar with your project and all the good work you do. And that is particularly relevant to MSPI participants. We can't ask for additional information.
Can I say, as the program manager of MSPI, if I'm asked by Amanda to review any grants, I have to review them from the same perspective as I might be asked to review any other grant. So I will have to be equally dispassionate. So don't assume I know and that I will be the one looking at it. So just to reconfirm that, you have to put the same effort in and don't make any assumptions.
And photographs for all projects are very important, but particularly for collections, to give us good captioned photograph samples of the collection, and to concentrate that we've outlined on the guidance document exactly what you have to submit with your application. So make sure that you use that as a checklist. And there was a question about photographs. It seems to have gone off the system. Colin put a comment in that he'd like photographs all in a PDF, one PDF document, because it's easier to look at. If you do that, that's welcome. If you don't do that, you won't fail on that basis. We're very clear about what the fail is, and usually a fail is at screening, where project-specific documentation hasn't been included, and this documentation would have been explicitly itemised in the guidance document. So you won't fail on that basis, but we would ask you to caption your files clearly so that it is easier for assessors to go through them.
Yeah, and could I make one final comment? If people have been asking for my slides because they think, I can't imagine it's for the pretty pictures, I think it'll be more for the information. The information that I put into the slides about the various projects that were supported last year, actually all of that is available on the grants pages to download, along with many other projects that were supported in tranche 2. Of the Community Scheme Grants Programme last year. Amanda has both tranche 1 and tranche 2 up at the moment. So I've put nothing more, no less in my slides than is actually available in more detail on the website. And in fact, where I anonymised most of them, it names the museums there. So, and one final thing, the network, the MSPI network and the local authority museums, while they're also grant applicants, I know they're always happy to help people as well. So if you have any questions, they can be another resource if a museum is nearby you.
Lovely, thank you so much, Lesley-Ann. We're going to move on to our next panelist, who is Ian Doyle, and he's going to speak to us about archaeology. So Ian, I am just going to put the spotlight on you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Valerie, and hello, everybody. Now, I have a few slides to help raise a couple of issues. Just bear with me now while I find them. Yes, you should be able to see that. And we'll just try to get it to move to presentation view. There we go. Look, great to be here, and a bit of a long session for you, so I'll try not to be too long-winded. So archaeology in the Heritage Council, well, it's not like this at all. It's a Lego model. I have a son that likes his Lego. We do our best in this scheme, in this Heritage Council community grant scheme, to avoid disturbing subsurface archaeological remains, including skeletons, and we don't find treasure. And that looks like it's a man Lego figure. the archaeological profession these days is a 50-50 split, male and female, so it could as likely be a woman doing something like this as well. What is, I suppose, accurate in it is camera, that emphasis on examining and recording. You might think the community grants in archaeology, what on earth could a community be doing? Well, through this scheme over a number of years, there has been a huge amount of work done for archaeology by communities, but in a very particular way, which is working in partnership. And I'll keep coming back and stressing that as we work our way through this. So what kind of things do we do through this scheme? Well, the most prevalent projects that we get would be church and graveyard ones. Everything from doing a conservation plan, surveys, to specifications, to then moving out to carry out repair or conservation works. Surveys of monuments and landscapes, interpretive projects, and do you know what? Sometimes it's nice to see something different too, that doesn't involve a church, might involve a stranger, a different monument, survey of a landscape. So we like to see different things as well. Churches, graveyards, really important. People seem to be drawn to them. They're like magnets for communities. And they're really, really worthwhile projects, and they're really important. And as I said, there's been some really important projects done under this scheme over recent years. But as always, remember the legislation and the fact that heritage is generally protected. For some people, that's red tape and it's barriers and things. They're really just little hurdles that you have to jump through. And if you work in partnership with people, you'll find that can be readily addressed. Where are we going next? Yes. So normally with churches and graveyards, if you take this site here, it's a typical medieval church. You can see that there's some precarious overhanging masonry there. There's a window there that's been robbed out. There's probably water getting in. The only thing that this photograph, this image of this medieval church is missing is a jungle of ivy. And that's what's typical on most of these medieval churches. And what typically works is, or what typically happens is, if community group, they're interested in this site, they're interested in its condition, they're worried about it falling down, there's some concern amongst relatives, they may well have graves around these buildings, and they're a little bit worried about their safety. So what we would always say, if you're thinking of applying to us, or even if you're thinking about a project like this at all, contact your local authority heritage officer. They're a really good first place to start. Check the ownership of the graveyard. Who owns it? It may well actually be in the ownership of the local authority. If you're thinking of work, make a plan. A plan is a great start. So a lot of the applications we get in for church sites and churchyards and medieval churches that are in room would involve a plan. A plan is a great way to start. If before you get started, don't go removing the ivy. Don't attempt to flatten the humps and the bumps. We produced this green box here on the right to try summarize good practice, and get advice. So I'd say the first thing is get a plan. If you have a plan, use the plan as a basis to apply for funding. We funded a number of plans, conservation plans or management plans for churches and graveyards and other monuments over the years. So use your plan. Plan is a great way to access funding. Work your way down through the actions, or make sure that they're prioritized. If you're interested in carrying out repairs, try get a specification for the repairs done as part of your plan. If you apply to the Heritage Council for funding, or if you're thinking of going to the Community Monuments Fund run by the National Monument Service, specification, drawings, what will you do? What kind of line, what kind of materials will you use? How will you approach it? They're the kind of things that you'll need. So you'll need expertise there from an archaeologist, maybe an engineer or a conservation architect. Graveyard surveys, we've seen a lot of these over the years, and they're really, really worthwhile projects. They really engage a lot of people. And Irish tombstones from the 1800s on, 1700s on, are an amazing source. Folk art, genealogical information, demographic information, and they're beautiful things as well. Communities love recording them, and we funded a lot of those. Now, what we would say is, I'd say two things. Don't just get an expert in who records it and gives a lecture and then rides off into the sunset. What we love to see are projects where everybody gets engaged. It can be a sunny day, you can go out, you can learn a new skill, you can learn about 18th century, 19th century funerary headstones, you'll make connections to the people in your community, dead and alive, and there's the digital upload side. You can learn digital skills, photography as well. The other point then is make sure it's available. When I started working in the Heritage Council, I spent a lot of time looking for a survey of a certain church site in Kilkenny City that had been recorded on paper by a false scheme in the early 1990s. It was as good as lost. We found it in the end, but we now live in a digital world. Figure out how to put it up digitally so it can be a resource for everybody, so that it can build up into a genealogical documentary resource as well. The historicgraves.ie platform is just one such source. I'm not saying you have to use them, but a digital source where it's freely available is really, really important. In terms of conservation works then, this is a project we've been funding over a couple of years. It's called Knockboy Church in West County Waterford. The photograph on the left was it when it was starting off. You can see all the ivy. The church was really, really precarious. It's a really important church site, and in a way I'm going to say it's different and it's special, but in a way it's a kind of a typical one of these projects that you see all across the country. Down a little side road, a jungle of ivy. The roots intertwine, they get into the masonry, they love the lime, they start dislodging things, and before you know it, things are ready to collapse. So here you have the local group, Dr. Nora White, an expert on own, one of the locals here, and a very good mason, Tom Pollard, and they formed a team, and they formed the Knockboy Church Conservation Group. Now, what's really unusual at this church is it has 5 own stones which have been used as lintels. So there's one down just covered in that blue sling in the bottom right. So this group, they started around 2018, so that's 2018, 19, 20, 21, and there's probably another season of work there. Funding from the Heritage Council, the National Monument Service, Creative Ireland, over that 5-year period, and they've saved that church. So I think what I'd stress out of this project is it takes time. Conservation projects like this take time. That old expression, make haste slowly. You got to phase projects through, and that's good practice. But as well as that, get a team together, spread the load, and that's really the focus of this scheme. Here's another one. This is the Church of the Rat, Killashandra, County Cavan. This is a really interesting Jacobean church in Killashandra, and what you can see in this picture is an awful lot of smiles. If you look at them, they're doing a Heritage Week event. I don't think the photographer forced them all to smile. They look like they're enjoying their event. So a Heritage Week event, obviously really important. But I think what's also in that picture is you've got the Tidy Towns group, and there's a lady there just left of centre. That's the Heritage Officer. So again, I'll stress that point. That's Anne-Marie from Cavan County Council. It's a local authority owned site. And the problem with this church was that there are 2 17th century red brick vaults just behind that gable, and the water was washing through. The lime mortar covering it perished. The group was really worried that those 17th century brick vaults were going to collapse. So they were part of our Adopt a Monument scheme, but they put a team together with a conservation architect and worked with the local authority, and they had a lot of fun along the way actually. Open days on site, hosted a story sharing evening. Conservation works carried out over the last 3 years. At this stage, that's probably 4 years. They had a brick making workshop in celebration of the brick vaulted roof in the church. And they're continuing to do works. They did work on a vault at the back of the plot in 2021 with Heritage Council funding. So that was the project before it at the start, and this is it now. This is the roof. That roof looks a little bit strange or different, but that means that, and that's subject to good advice and agreement with National Monuments and the local authority, it means that that church vault will survive. It will survive for the foreseeable future. And that's a really important step and a really fine achievement by that group. It's not all about churches. In terms of surveys, this is a really interesting one. This is Chlorine Cairn in County Wexford on a little hill called the Fort Mountain. It's forested, and a group knew that there were references to a cairn, probable prehistoric burial site, probably Bronze Age, maybe earlier, and there were references to a cairn. So they started working off the Ordnance Survey maps to see what could they find, and they started noticing piles of stone. So they partnered up with the Geological Survey. I think they were on John Creedon's program about a year or two ago as well on the television, and the Discovery program, and a private drone operator who did some survey work for them. So they formed a partnership with experts, and lo and behold, you'll see in the right hand image, just the center, this black and white image, see this circular blob. Turns out it's a prehistoric burial cairn, which they found and which the forest had just about stayed clear of. And lo and behold, they got another surprise, because just at what would it be? Just north of that large central blob, there's another circular feature about 11 o'clock from it. Turns out it's a second cairn. And just looking at that image, I wonder are there other ones as well. So community groups can work on projects like this and can make important discoveries. So I think that's really important. But again, it's about partnership. They work with people, survey companies, state agencies, and they really reap the rewards. The other thing we tend to fund under this scheme in recent years has been geophysical surveys. So they're the kind of things you tend to see on television, but they're actually a really standard, normal piece of archaeological practice nowadays. And there are companies and individuals that provide these services, and they're really, really powerful in terms of finding out what's going on and just getting an insight into what's under the ground without lifting a sod. And it's relatively inexpensive as well. So the photograph on the right is Malin Church. It's a site in Donegal, right in the tip of Malin Head, and they were doing a survey, and here they are having a briefing. So again, we don't like the idea of surveyor getting a phone call, arriving, surveying, disappearing, issuing a report. We like to see people involved, an open day, people getting an opportunity, maybe even to learn about the techniques of this. Bring the local school out. If there's a fifth year physics class, surely the techniques that are being used here are really important. If there's a walking group, bring them out, show them what it is. In other words, share it. It's not just an expert arriving in a van, leaving, and then sending out a report and an invoice. It has to leave a lasting legacy in the community. What did this one find at Malin Head? This is the church here, the black rectangle, and you can see these black images just to the north of it. They seem to be standing buildings. When you look at it, you think of it, that area just north of the church would have been the logical place for a car park, if you weren't thinking, if you weren't informed. So that piece of work has probably paid off straight away in terms of learning about what's there, what's under the ground, and what not to do, and how not to open up this site. So things like that are really important, and they're just a really important and cost-effective means of discovery. I should say we don't fund archaeological excavation under this scheme. If it's archaeological excavation that you're interested in, there's a Royal Irish Academy grant scheme for that. Useful sources: heritage maps, archaeology.ie, various publications. The amount of information that's available on the website, and I think there's a section on the Heritage Council website on useful sources as well. The amount of information that's out there is huge. It's really important. And it's all freely available in terms of mapping, aerial photographs as well. The things on the right are just selections, some of the helpful things you'll find if you're thinking of archaeological projects. Last slide then. Steps to a good project, just thinking about this. Involve as many people as you can. Involve the community, share the load. It's not just about one person trying to push a car up a hill. And remember, it has to be a community group, or the kind of groups that are named in the scheme guidance that we issued, and it's on the Heritage Council website. Understand the site, understand the landscape. Good conservation is informed practice. You're doing something, when you have an understanding of what's there. So it might be a survey, it might be getting a specification commissioned, it might be a geophysical survey, it might be some research. In other words, it might be a report that you commission. And that brings me on to my next point, partnership. Good community heritage projects involve archaeology or a partnership between the local authority, between the heritage officer, between a professional archaeologist, the community. Again, just don't work in isolation. And then finally, no, not finally, people in place. A good project reconnects people, local community with their place and with each other. I think that's what heritage is really good at doing. Heritage, I always think heritage is like glue. It can bring people together and bring communities together. And then finally, enjoy it, just like people in the picture I showed in Killishandra, all smiling. Do your Heritage Week event. Yeah, it might seem like work. The project might seem like work. There are deadlines, things you have to do, but these things are achievable, and people can actually change their environment, their local place, their monument for the good. Plus, stay in touch with us. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ian. That was brilliant. I really loved what you said about heritage being the glue that brings and binds us together. And especially, I think, with archaeology, it's one of those areas that people tend to think of as quite a closed house. So it's lovely to see that there are ways to open it up to community. And yeah, I think it's really lovely. And some of the lovely projects that we saw there, and we got to see Colum's lovely smiling face as well, which is always a bonus to any day. So we have a couple of questions for you here. We've been asked, Ian, do you know if a geophysical survey will work in a tarmac car park area? And I would add to that, if not, what else would you suggest?
Ooh, probably not. There are techniques like ground penetrating radar that might work, but what I'd say there is talk to a specialist in geophysical survey. And if you Google them, you will find them. They are out there. It's quite specialized, but the expertise is out there.
And there's so many more different types of technologies in that area nowadays as well, with LiDAR and things like that. Like there's and even desk-based research can tell you a lot too.
Yeah, and it's a lot more cost-effective now than it used to be.
Yes. You've been asked, as a complete beginner wanting to restore a small monument, what advice would Ian give?
Make haste slowly and have a lot of patience. I don't mean to be flippant. Good projects like this, you sit back, you figure out what you want to do and why. Do you need to do it at all, in fact? Restore is a word I always get a little bit worried about. I'd say, first of all, seek an understanding of what it is. Is it protected? What range of protection is on it? What are you likely to be allowed to do? And then just talk to the right people. Check out some of the publications I mentioned and just take it slowly. I don't know the monument, so I can't really comment in any more detail.
For a long-term project, should these groups submit new applications each year outlining a plan of work?
Well, we work on a yearly budgetary cycle. So there's no point telling us that in 2024, you're going to want 15 grand. Tell us what you want in 2022. That's this year, yeah. Tell us what you want in 2022. Obviously, tell us that you see this as being a multi-year phased project, but tell us what you can achieve in 2022. Most heritage conservation projects are done over a year or two, sometimes 3 years. Some of the projects I showed run a little bit longer, and that was why I mentioned just take it slowly and have patience. Good conservation takes time, but it is very rewarding.
And say in that regard, because we had similar questions earlier about projects that were multi-year or multi-phase, if they are putting together, say, a 3 or a 5 year plan, should they include that in their application as well as an aside or a supporting document? Say, we are currently in year XYZ.
Yeah. Oh, I see the point. Yes, but yeah, that's good to get an overall sense of a project's design and its direction. but we can't make any commitment in terms of funding outside of the existing year.
Yeah. Brilliant. Colm, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in there because this is an issue with building projects as well. And I think I answered a couple of questions in the Q&A about that. And just to add a slightly different perspective and reiterate what I said in the Q&A, community projects can be challenging, and it's really important to just bite off as much as you can chew and not take on more than you can handle as a community group or especially as an individual. And that means taking small steps. There's a heck of a lot of world out there that deserves to be conserved. And if there's one tiny piece of it that you like, it doesn't have to entirely rest on your shoulders and be your entire responsibility, even if it feels like that. So just to reinforce what Ian is saying, taking small steps, break it down into bite-sized chunks is really important. And that way you won't make any mistakes, or you won't be pushing people around and expecting them to spend money on large projects that you've taken responsibility on for. So it'll always be more sensible to break it up into small parts.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just for your own head, tackling something that is such a huge project, you know, like with anything in life, break it down into smaller sections. Slowly, catchy monkey, as they say.
Just to come in, one of our participants has asked us to mention the importance of good conservation or conservation consultants when talking about projects. So Ian, would you like to just expand on the importance of that?
That was what I meant by partnership with a heritage professional. You need people advising you about about legislation, what kind of protection, what kind of permissions you need, and then the technical aspects as well. So that was what I meant by the specification. We need advice.
Yeah, and I go further and say we also need proof that these conservation consultants are going to be available for the project to supervise it. And as part of your reporting to us, if you are awarded funding, we will be looking for a report from them to confirm the actions that have been undertaken and to confirm that conservation good practice has been observed. So please make sure to include their cost in your budget table.
Yeah, an uploaded quotation is a great place to start, because it shows us that you've been in touch with them and you're thinking about it.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's about, oh, we've one more question's just popped in there. One group would be interested in undertaking a series of survey work on a monument classified as a barrow. Would ground radar scanning be eligible, or the CHGS? We believe there are some curbstones which might suggest a multi-phase monument. In order to do this, we need to remove vegetation. Would this be eligible as part of project costs? We would also like to repair the fencing to make the site stock secure, sheep to mow the grass. In order to repair the fencing, we need to install posts. Would an archaeologist need to supervise fencing? Many thanks, Ian.
No, there's a great question, and I have a slight suspicion I know where that monument is as well. Where do we start there? Now, there's a lot of questions in that. The one thing you didn't mention is the landowner. Make sure you have them on board first, because you won't go anywhere otherwise. I'd say talk to your heritage officer as well. They may have an archaeological background and may be well familiar with this project. Sounds like you're trying to do a lot of work in first year as well, so I'd say be patient. I don't know how much wildlife or biodiversity there might there, but I'd say be careful there and think about the seasons when you're planning on doing work. In terms of the geophysical survey, I would say talk to a geophysical survey specialist who will give you advice. Resistivity sometimes works well there. GPR is a bit more specialized, but that can also work. But I'd say seek advice there. In terms of the fencing, don't know where you're talking about fencing, but I would be wary of commenting too much on it, because I don't know what kind of fence you're talking about, what depth or where the perimeter is. But I would say be careful. You might need advice there. So I'd say talk to your heritage officer first, or get yourself talking to an archaeologist who you'd like to engage on the project as well. But sounds interesting.
Yeah, sounds great. And I suppose the resounding bit there is to definitely talk to the professionals and heritage officers and archaeologists and everything. We've seen too many stories in the news recently about people going Indiana Jones on things.
It's all about partnership, and that's what we've been stressing on community archaeology projects here for years. It's not about charging in, it's about taking the time, and it's about just working out a good relationship and figuring out what it is you want to do.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Ian. That was great. We're coming up to our last session of the day now. It's been a very long day for us, so thank you for sticking with us, everyone. We've got our very last speaker, who is Alison Harvey. So we've got a few moments left now, Ali, just in case people are coming in specifically for this. We'll just wait until it actually hits the fore, just so nobody is missing that. But I will pop the spotlight onto your good self there. There we go. So you have the floor now, but we have, well, we're just coming up to it now there. It's just hitting about 4 o'clock. So the floor is yours.
Thanks very much. Okay, can you see those all right? I'll just go to full screen.
Yeah, can see them.
No, it's all right. Yeah. Is that all right there? Oh, gosh. So anyway, Valerie, it's been a busy day for you, yeah? Okay, so collaborative, yeah, really what I want to talk about today is Ireland's Collaborative Town Centre Health Check programme. So in terms of, you know, things that might be useful for community groups, we also have community-led village design statement toolkit, which can obviously be sent out, but today I just want to focus on the CTCHC programme. So just to say 4 parts of this presentation, just talk about a lot about collaboration. So I think we're all talking about that today, collaboration, partnership. Just to talk as well about funding pathways, the benefits and the impact of the programme, and also then what are the 4 phases. So it's just to give the information out today about what we're trying to do with this programme. Okay, so 5 pillars: government departments, civic society. The key thing, the USP, the unique selling point of this programme is the universities, the role of the universities and the IT, so and TUs. So yeah, really we could not do this programme without those people. We have 15 towns in the programme at the minute, 70 plus partners. We do workshops, we do training sessions. Obviously we've sort of moved online, or pivoted seems to be the word, put everything online. And yeah, we have a 15-step methodology for phase 1, which, you know, was designed at the very start. So I designed that with the universities to make sure that they could all do it, and we're happy doing it. So yeah, just to say that the CTCHCs, the projects that we set up and run, that it's really relevant for some of the directives that are coming or that are in place from the EU. So in terms of SEA, strategic environmental assessment and environmental impact assessment. And we've won a few awards over the years since we set up in 2016. So just to highlight the programme for government that was launched in June 2020, we had been advocating for a Town Centre First policy from 2019. So that was then included in the programme for government, and CTCHC programme is very much at the heart of that. So really it's all about trying to, you know, get your data, create your data, measure everything, survey everything, map everything. So just to highlight in terms of the role of the civic groups, I should say as well that my whole background is sort of community empowerment. So I have 2 dissertations looking at community empowerment in regeneration. So, you know, everything that I do really with the Heritage Council, my role in the Heritage Council is trying to facilitate that through planning, through regeneration. So the visual there, you can see very much civic society, local groups. You know, that is one of the core pillars, one of the 5 pillars. And we also work with business groups, 3rd levels, as I've said, the regional assemblies, local authorities and government departments. So I'm just trying to show you the visuals. So you can sort of be aware of what we do. So again, at the very start, we did a land use classification system so we could map all our towns in the one sort of standardized way. So this is what we came up with. So this is not land use zonings, this is land use. Okay, so it's very important to make the distinction here. So what we're talking about is what is existing in the town centres, in the historic town centres. So we have 15 towns in the programme, and this is the sort of location of the towns. We don't have any programme funding at the minute for the towns in the east. So as a result of that, we have a huge waiting list. So if you're one of the towns on the waiting list, you know, we're really trying to sort of, obviously through this programme for government, we need to sort of think about trying to support those towns. So yeah, The distribution, obviously, you know, that's a lot of towns on a waiting list. And for me, what that shows is a massive energy at a local level, which is something that, as I say, really enthuses me and gets me out of bed in the morning. So yeah, just in terms of, I'm sure Colm and Ian and Lorcan have touched on this already, you know, what we're identifying are the macro data gaps for town centres for historic places. So like there's not enough data on floor space vacancy, there's no data really on building condition. So, you know, we really need to look at our building stock, what is there at the minute. Also the heritage and cultural significance of the buildings in these historic villages and town centres. You know, what is the significance, you know, and also what value is it to the local communities? That's really what we're trying to sort of facilitate, because we're practitioners, but we obviously have to listen to you as well and work with you. And the beauty is when we all come together. Then as well, the macro data gaps, there's not enough information on ownership. And what we find as well in the historic town centres is that maybe the ground floor is owned by one owner and then the upper floors are owned by somebody else. So, you know, it's a sort of tapestry of a town centre. Okay, so this is the secret sauce, as we call it. This is the 15 steps that we apply when we do the CTCHCs in the towns. So, you know, it's really important to do the land use surveys to find out, you know, what is the vacancy rate in your town or in your village. And also what's the vacancy rate in the upper floors. And then to do footfall surveys to see where people are moving around your town, around your village. Footfall is probably one of the best surveys that you can do, just to sort of watch the streets, see how people use, as I call it, human habitats, you know. So, I mean, I think we need to sort of think about how we live. And obviously during lockdown, people have very much reconnected with their place. So that's really, really interesting. So yeah, the land use survey, really important, footfall surveys, business surveys, consumer surveys, rental. I mean, really what you're trying to do is take the pulse of your town. As I say, car parking, accessibility audit, how do people get around? You know, what's the access for abled and less able bodies? Environmental quality, you're looking at air and noise, water, crime figures, it all comes together, you know. So, and really what we're going to try and do this year is move it all onto a digital platform. So we collect all of this information, we create all this data, and then we produce summary reports, and we do launch, obviously, because that's a massive thing. So to do this for the first time is, you know, a huge undertaking. So I would sort of say, encourage you to maybe look at one of the steps and see, can you do one of those as part of your community projects? And as I say, do it within the CTCHC program. So please get in touch if that is what you would like to do. Okay, so in terms of the outputs, this is the land use map for Sligo. So really just to say in terms of vacancy rate, ground floor retail commercial vacancy rate is a key indicator in urban economics. So the target at a European level would be 5%. So you can see here at Sligo is at 18.4%, and we have other towns that are 24%. 28%. We had a town that was at 31%. It's now come back down to 28%, but these vacancy rates are really, you know, out of kilter with what Europe is trying to do. Okay, so in terms of output, again, this is just extracts from the documents that we do. It's all very visual, so I would say as well, you know, try not to sort of write lots and lots of reports, or, you know, just go visual. Everything is social media, everything is immediate, and everybody wants to sort of see, you know, images. Okay, so this is Tipperary. We are publishing this tomorrow. So yeah, it's just really to say their vacancy rate is 28.2%. So yeah, 5%, you know, we had a Dutch delegation came to Dundalk in June 2019. The Dutch, their ground floor retail vacancy rate was at 6.8%, and the Danish were at 5% before COVID. So yeah, it's really, really important that you get this data so you can tell funders where you want to go and what your vision is for your town or your village. So yeah, the CTCHC, really what we're trying to do is get the towns and the communities onto a pathway for funding. So there's a lot of funding out there. As you know, I mean, the reason we're all here today is for funding. But there's also Urban Regeneration Development Fund, that's for the towns greater than 10,000 population. Then there's a Rural Regeneration Development Fund, that's for towns less than 10,000 population. And we also have villages, and as I say, we have the community-led village design statement toolkit, so we'd really like to get that out as well. Housing for all, lots of funding out there. So, you know, really what we're trying to do is to help you target that funding. In terms of just one of the towns that we have in the Collaborative Town Centre Health Check programme is Tralee. So we started in the Tralee baseline phase 1 in 2017. So yeah, we launched that, and we worked with IT Tralee at the time, and Tralee Chamber. So it was everybody coming together, Kerry County Council, fabulous project. That was the first CTCHC over the line. So we launched that in August 2017. And then a few months later, Tralee won Most Enterprising Town in Ireland award. And then we followed that up obviously with Victoria McCarthy, Martha Farrell, Kevin Burns, if you're out there, you know, big shout out to them. Historic Towns Initiative in 2020, and then more recently the money that's been announced, 15.93 million under the URDF. Okay, just in terms of what is needed for our towns, you know, with the programme for government, there's obviously, you know, we need a lot of change, a lot of policies, a lot of action is needed. So, you know, the Town Centre First policy that we advocated for in 2019, I believe that that's going to be out in the next few weeks, and support is needed for the Collaborative Town Centre Health Check Programme, as I say, with a waiting list of 45 towns plus, actually, because more towns have contacted me in the last 2 weeks. We also need to see the establishment of an Ireland's Towns Partnership, which will bring all the towns together and all the leaders together. There's compulsory purchase order. Really, there needs to be a, you know, a real sort of increase in activity. Other European member states are have introduced compulsory sale order. You know, how do we get the leverage to make CPO work in a much more efficient way? We also need to look at land management. We only have 3 town centre business improvement districts in Ireland. So again, you know, going back to that visual about civic groups, societal groups, you know, civic leaders, how do we help you? Because that's just like you guys are the backbone of the country. Community development trusts, we don't have those in Ireland yet. Other countries have those. Conservation area regeneration schemes, that's in Scotland. We're doing some research on that at the minute. How could we apply that in Ireland? Heritage action zones, that's in England. Again, you know, I mean, any theory that I studied years ago, you need a designation to do regeneration. It doesn't just happen. And then, as I say, we really want to put all the data that we're collecting with all these towns and the towns that are coming into the programme. You know, we really want to go digital, so everything will be put on a digital dashboard. So that's really where I'm going this year. And just to say, the Central Statistics Office, so we're working with them now, and that will be proceeding now in the next few months. So that's really exciting to go digital. Okay, and CTCHC programme, just really to say there's lots of webinars that we did last year. Please have a look at them. We did a webinar with the European office to look at strategic environmental assessment indicators for the Green Deal. You know, we're going to need new ways of measuring the green environment. Meanwhile, US, fabulous report that we launched last October, Reeling in the Years. That was our sort of end of year webinar where everybody got together to talk about what they've done actually last year. I just hear my doorbell going. Very bad timing. Okay, just to finish up here, just to say one of the benefits of the programme, it's a data-driven programme. Okay, we're really trying to get the evidence. Thanks. Okay, and we're also trying to create spatial data. So as I say, GeoHive, you know, we're working with the CSO to make sure that that's all done. We're trying to help communities and civic leaders get community, you know, funding. It's all really, really important. Regeneration of town centres, in order to do the funding applications, you need to have this data. Then in terms of social capital, that's what we're trying to create, is social capital, you know, that there's a value to all the relationships and the networks that we help to build in the communities. And obviously you guys are working away doing that anyway, but we're obviously trying to make sure that we help you. Public value, and also, you know, moving on in terms of regeneration doesn't just happen, it has to have an engine. Okay, and it's quite hard to do, and to get that engine in place takes time, takes effort, but as Ian says, it's very worthwhile. Enhanced collaborative processes, participative democracy, that's really, we're trying to get people to engage. We're looking at the regeneration of our historic town centres. Lockdown has really, you know, helped to shine a light on how, you know, wonderful our town centres were, and really they need some care and attention. And we're looking to enhance sense of place, civic pride and belonging. So as I say, we're in phase 1 at the minute, and the programme for government, we envisage 4 phases to this programme. So that's just a visual to sort of say, one of the things that we've actually set up late last year was a diaspora network to try and tap into, you know, the diaspora that are out there from your towns that are all around the world. It's really quite crazy. Actually, we did a podcast series at the start of last year, and basically just the diaspora just started getting in touch and saying, you know, we're out here, we're sort of stuck, can't get home, but we're really listening, and we're really identifying and, you know, thinking of our towns and places that we're from originally. So, I mean, that was just so lovely to get all those messages. All right, so that's it really. Thank you very much, and sorry about the doorbell. I don't know if you heard that. It's never happened to me before. Okay, so thank you. That's it. Valerie.
Brilliant, thanks, million Ali. I thought it was my doorbell going, and yeah, I'm in a battle of wills at the moment with the doorbell, so I was like, I'm not moving. But yeah, the joys of working from home, I suppose.
Did you turn the electricity off?
Yeah, we don't have any questions in yet. We did have a comment in from Anne-Marie saying we developed a heritage action plan with Alison and the CTCTHC program. It's our map to heritage regeneration, and just commenting on how valuable it is. And just wondering if you have any examples of what groups could apply for.
Yeah, so I mean, that's good that Anne-Marie's brought that up. So the Heritage Action Plan, yeah, because of the lockdown, you know, we couldn't get out to do the footfall surveys, obviously, you know. So I actually wrote a Heritage Action Plan. I had 3 workshops in Tipperary Town, January, February, March in 2020. So the Heritage Action Plan for Tipperary has now been funded by Leader and other funders. So yeah, I mean, I've definitely, the Heritage Action Plan, we could circulate that. That really, one of the things I think we're near completion in Tipperary is a heritage audit for the town centre. And as I say, the 15 steps, to look through those 15 steps, the secret sauce, and to see which bit of those steps you would like to do, you know, as part of the CTCHC, but come to us and ask me, you know, what would you, so that's the first heritage action plan that's been done for a town in the country. And the heritage audit, I know the heritage officers are working away doing the heritage audits as well. So yeah, I mean, they've been really, really helpful in terms of helping us to start that in Tipperary. I'm trying to think, public realm plans is another programme that I run in terms of, you know, trying to look at your public spaces. But I mean, fundamentally, and I mean, I'm sure Colm and Ian would have their thoughts on this, you know, as I said about the information on building condition, you know, we really have sort of neglected our historic buildings and our town centres and our village centres. So, you know, you could do an ownership map. You could look to see, can you do a building condition survey for a building in your town centre or a few buildings together. And maybe even just to do a land use map. I mean, the most fundamental thing is to find out how is your town used or how is your village used. So there's a lot of things there that could be applied for. So yeah, I mean, it's a movable feast at the minute. We're just trying to create new and innovative ways to sort of fix our town centres. As I say, just going back to the vacancy rates, you know, it is, the key indicator is 5% for ground floor retail. What we're finding is maybe the upper floors is around 80%. But, you know, when you look at the Danish and the Dutch, and they're at 5 and 6%, and our towns are well over 20%, you know, we really do need to focus on this. And it's great that the Heritage Council is leading on this.
And following on from that, we've been asked, can you examine / highlight / recommend changes to historic towns architectural conservation area to include communities and schools in understanding its benefit?
Yeah, that is a lovely question, whoever put that forward. I mean, I have been trying to push architectural conservation areas for several years. I would definitely say the one question that I am asked, hands down, and as I say, my whole background is community planning, the question that I am asked the most by community groups and civic leaders around the country is, what is an ACA? Architectural conservation areas in Ireland were usually designated pre the UNECE Aarhus Convention. So if you have a look at the Aarhus Convention, AARHUS, so that's all about public participation in environmental decision making. So I mean, it's fundamental that our ACAs really are updated, because they didn't involve the public the first time that they were done. And I mean, going back to what I was saying there about value, and that we need to know what you value rather than what we think you value, that is a fundamental for community planning. So anything to do with updating ACAs, I mean, I was actually on a local authority site last week and the link to the ACAs didn't work. So, you know, as a practitioner, for me, I sort of feel empathy for civic leaders, because if I can't find the ACA reports, you know, how do we expect community groups and community leaders to find that information, which is, you know, really technical, I suppose. So absolutely, ACAs, that is something, as I say, we're doing some research at the minute looking at Scotland to see what are they doing with their conservation area regeneration schemes. So they actually have a scheme that uses ACAs. We don't have that in Ireland. We have very little you know, to do with promoting ACAs and the benefits in terms of community. So absolutely, please do shine a light on that, because that is a potential opportunity going forward. And I myself, like, very much interested in ACAs. I don't think that they're performing. I think they've got enormous potential, and we need to definitely give that some sort of, you know, energy.
I see Colm has his hand raised to come in there.
Sorry, Ali, I hope you don't mind me jumping in as well. just to let our participants know that we will be launching a study about ACAs this year, and it's designed to try and bring planners and conservation officers together to work on promoting them and making them effective as policy. But two words that we're going to try and highlight in that are amenity and enhancement of the character of the area, and what is the amenity, the residential amenity, the natural amenity, the visitor amenity for those areas. And I suppose I'm just prompted by that this is a grants seminar. I'm prompted to suggest on the basis of that these are areas that could be very valuable for a community group to get stuck in relation to an ACA. Just to take, for example, the residential amenity of an area, a town that might be great looking but not doing well functionally, and trying to figure out what it is what are the characteristics and the functions in that area, in that town, that are part of its character and may need to be supported in planning policy and in heritage or conservation policy as well. It's just a suggestion, and I am flagging something that we don't have out there right now, so it may not be useful to a grant applicant in the next few weeks. But if there are things in the town that you that you'd like to look at, they could be. It's possible to study them, and it may be part of an evolving policy advice. I'd also mention some studies that were done in County Galway in the last few years with the help of the Galway Heritage Officer, and their heritage audits of towns, and they have proven a successful way for a community to engage with urban heritage.
Yeah, Colin, that's what I was saying. So the heritage audit that we did in Tipperary, I know the heritage officers are out there doing that kind of work. But going back to the ACAs, I mean, the whole thing about ACAs, Architecture Conservation Area, and we would be happy to share the provision in the Planning Act and come back to us on that, because really the public, the community groups were not involved in the designations of those ACAs from the 2000 Act. And as I say, if you could do, raise an awareness of what is an ACA, what buildings are in your ACA, is the ACA, I mean, I'm thinking of one town in particular where it's my opinion that the ACA is too small and doesn't actually sort of reflect what's on the ground. And then the department as well came in behind us and said that they had been looking at it and felt that the ACA wasn't appropriate, it wasn't large enough, so like the community, if that's your town, you really deserve to have a say in your ACA. That to me is a fundamental part of community planning.
This next one that we have, I like because it gives me an opportunity to do my best impression of an Instagram influencer when they do their Ask Me Anything sections. Not a question, just a comment. The CTCHC and other plan surveys are working well in towns along with that regeneration engine in relation to attracting funding and saving the heritage of towns. Ballyshannon is very active presently with HTI and regeneration planning. So that's a great example of where it is really helping a town. Ballyshannon is doing great work as well. So great to get that comment coming in. We have a question there as well about the ACAs. I see Cullum has replied an answer as well, but just for everyone to hear it. ACAs seem to have no dedicated funding to help building owners to comply with the policy. Is this the case? And Cullum replied, I think it is true to say that there is no current dedicated stream or funding for ACAs. Just so that everyone can hear that as well.
Yeah, Barry, just on that, sorry, as I say, we're looking at Scottish models, right? So Scotland has a conservation area regeneration scheme, so it might be worthwhile for some of the community leaders who are in this call to have a look at that online, or we can send it round. And also, it's just really, really important that the communities feel that they have some stake in the ACA in their town. And also Ballyshannon, then yes, we did a CTCHC in Ballyshannon a few years ago with Queen's University. So then that led directly to funding under RRDF and obviously HTI. So, I mean, the key thing, as we're all sort of saying here today, is like you need to get that data, you need to do your surveys, because that'll take you on the pathway for larger funding. And we're here as a team to sort of say, look, we'd love to help you.
This is a really pertinent question, I think. What happens if your local authority does not have an architectural conservation officer? It makes it much harder.
It does, yeah. And I mean, again, you know, we're sort of looking at that with the programme because with the towns that have the high vacancy rate, I mean, it's my sort of, you know, I'm actually going to sort of make sure that I do research in the next few weeks, but it looks like the towns that have the highest vacancy rates are the same areas that don't have an ACO, an Architectural Conservation Officer. So, I mean, it's very difficult to try and get in there on the ground if the ACO is not there and the expertise is not there in the local authorities, because, you know, obviously, where do you go? Where does the community, you know, civic leader, where do they start? Where's the interface? And I'm actually, you know, I've had calls today about that in the town over in the west because there is no ACO, and the community and business leaders are sort of asking me what should they do. So it is it's a very sort of real problem as we try to sort of fix our towns. So I mean, those ACOs, that is really, it's a matter for the local authority and the department. But yeah, definitely, as I say, the vacancy levels are very, very high, and they're never meant to be over 11%, but we've got some towns that are over 20% that don't have an ACO. So yes, absolutely. I would, you know, definitely think about sort of talking to your politicians and saying, can they help?
Okay. This next one has a lot of acronyms in it, so I'm going to do my best to not get them jumbled up. Do you envisage the town centre's first policy be incorporated into the review of the upcoming county development plans? We would be interested in undertaking a CLVDS, waiting on TVRS, in relation to an LAP. Would the CLVDS sit alongside an LAP as an advisory document, i.e. read in conjunction with an LAP relating to the development of a village? Say that 5 times fast.
Sorry, is that a planner? That sounds like somebody, you know, like, because Ian and Colin and Lorcan always tease me about 3-letter acronyms. So yeah. Okay, so let me think. Community-led VDSs, right, community-led village design statements are included as policy in section 28 guidelines, which I will give to you, Valerie, for us to circulate. So the department, when we were setting up the community-led approach, the department actually waited so that they could put that into policy. So I think it's the housing guidelines. I'll have to check. Okay, 2010. Anyway, yeah, it's definitely there. Okay, the next bit. What was the next bit? The CDC. The So, oh yeah, sorry, you asked about the Town Centre First policy. Okay, so yeah, we started advocating for Town Centre First policy in 2019. Now, what is brilliant is that even though the Town Centre First policy has not come out yet, as this, you know, officially from the department, I think it's going to be launched in the next few weeks. The beauty of last year was a lot of the county development plans were prepared by the planning units and the local authorities, and the planners were obviously aware of the CTCHC programme because they were coming to the workshops and they were involved in the project. So fair play to the local authority planners, because they've actually put in TCF and CTCHC policies into those county development plans. So the local authority development plans are actually leading the way on Town Centre First, and that's why, you know, we really need the national policy. So yeah, as I say, it's all been sort of, you know, it's working its way through. And actually, I just put up a thing today about LAP. So I'm doing a review of the LAPs for the 15 towns that are in the CTCHC programme. So yeah, we're just trying to make sure that our planning policy is fit for purpose. Yeah.
Brilliant. Right, I think that is us about covered, and we're coming up right up to the half an hour. So that's brilliant, guys. We've done really well at keeping on schedule today, I think. Thank you so much, Ali, for that. I'll take the spotlight off you there so you're not feeling as on the spot, as it were. So that's us finished for today. I know it's been a really long day, and hopefully people have managed to jump in and out as was needed for them, and I hope you all got a lot from it. I know I certainly learned a lot from it as well. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. Thank you to everyone for attending. We had a question there about recording, about when and where it will be available. So we are recording this session. We've recorded the entire day, including the Q&As, and it will be going up on YouTube as soon as possible. When that's going to happen will depend largely on my internet connection, which those of you who are based in the west of Ireland will know that could be any time. We'll do our best. So thank you everyone so much for attending today. Thank you for sharing all your wonderful questions and all your wonderful insights. It's great to see communities all across the country getting involved in their heritage. It's what we're all excited about. It's what we love to do. As Ali put it, it's what gets us up out of bed in the morning. So it's great to speak to all of you today. If you have any questions at all, as I said, you can always just reply to the webinar link, and it'll come, the email that you got, that'll come straight to me. And if you want to flag it for any of our speakers in particular, you can put that in there as well, and I'll forward it on to them. Otherwise, you'll get me on vkelly@heritagecouncil.ie, and you'll find all of our contact details on the Heritage Council website as well. And we're only ever an email away. We're here to help with everything that we can. So I hope everyone is very excited to get filling out some application forms. So I'll leave you all to get stuck into it, because there's a lot of work to be done. I hope we're all excited and motivated to get stuck in, and we'll talk to you all soon. Thank you all so much, and goodbye.